So, if you would pardon this, but in essence, it's the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, but now it's the rich are getting healthier and the poor are getting sicker.
But here's the rub. In the countries that have the greatest quintile spread, the rich are not as healthy as the rich in countries that narrow spread.
Across the board?
Across the board. So you end up with a situation in Brazil. If you're in the top 10th of 1% and live in Sao Paulo, you can't go out on the street. You have to be flown by helicopter from your home to your workplace because the risk of kidnapping for ransom and a whole bunch of other threats to your life and your health. Now that's an extreme example, but even at the more generalized level, people in the top quintile of unequal societies are not as healthy as people in the top quintile of a more equal society. So here's the challenge, the communication challenge, is how do you communicate to the wealthy that it's enlightened self-interest for them to support a fiscal policy that would lead to reduction of the quintile spread of income.
I mean, to me, it seems a little odd that you can be the wealthiest person in the world, but if you're exposed to smallpox, it doesn't matter your wealth.
Right.
We live, I think the analogy was, do you really want to swim in a pool that has a no peeing, region, the no peeing section of the pool? No. So if you're surrounded with a population that is sick, no matter how wealthy is, you're also at risk as well. Mm-hmm. And so the risk, the health of the society is going to improve the health of the individual.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean, is that the conclusion that we?
That's a good part of it. So you end up having to say to the clinician dealing with the individual patient, some of the major determinants of the health status of your patient are currently outside of your realm of intervention, except at the ballot box.
Interesting. So now you have a very broad perspective, both as a clinician, as an epidemiologist, and you've worked in both one-on-one and also at a national healthcare level. Mm-hmm. You're trying to communicate to a larger group of people about the decisions that they need to make. You want to make it. You want to make them understand the information. You want to make them to accept it. You want to make it so that they can apply it and remember it, and that they're motivated to do those things, to apply. How would you do it? What's the approach?
Well, when I'm talking to a group of people, I try to in part adopt the approach that Nick Kristof uses in his column in the New York Times. He once visited with us and met with the fellows in my center a few years back. And one of them asked him, so there seems to be a template that you follow. And he said, yes, there are three elements. First, I described some important problem, whether it's fistulas from impacted labor in Eastern Congo. Then I put a human face on it by describing an individual suffering from that problem. And then I always end up telling the reader what they can do to help. So here's the problem. Here's the story, because I think storytelling remains one of the most effective ways to communicate information. And tell a story about somebody who is struggling with all of these issues around personal behaviors and stress, and weave in the fact that this is part of the social determinants of health. And then, if you're trying, depending on whether you're trying to educate a group of clinicians to be aware of how important these issues are so that you can recruit them to being an informed, respected professional voice about policy change that would begin to erase some of this growing inequality. Or whether you're talking to your own patient and say, I know that the deck is stacked against people like you. That you grew up with hardworking parents who were both smokers, and you were exposed to that from an early age, and you started yourself when you were 14. And you have a longer and deeper addiction and a lot of pressures from what we call the social determinants of health. And so it's going to take an extra amount of work together, and I'm here to help you. And this is what we're going to do. Are you in? And then invoke the psychological principle of intentionality. You get somebody to say, I will do that. You increase the probability that they'll follow through enormously. So what I used to do with my patients who were getting zero exercise, but I'd say, are you like most of us? When you go to the mall, you sort of drive around the parking lot until you see an opening close to the entrance of the mall. Every person I've tried that with would not guess. So I said, well, here's what I'd like to do. And here's where the electronic medical record may be a little bit of a barrier, because I have the paper record. And I'd say, let's develop a little contract. Before I see you next in 3 months to follow up on your diabetes, every time you go to the mall, you'll take the first open spot off the highway and then walk to the entrance. You think you can do that? And in all the years that I did that, I only had one person who said, Dr. Lawrence, have you seen the way people drive in the parking lot? I'd get killed if I... So with that one exception, everybody else said, yeah, we can do that. And then 3 months later, I'd have the contract in the chart refresh my memory. I'd say, oh yeah, about that. And they, an amazing, this is where expert opinion rather than clinical trials and so forth does give, I never took the time or the effort to translate this into some kind of a study that would provide some really valid data. But my own impression was that a significant number of my patients would come back and they would say, oh yes, not only that, but my husband and I are now taking a walk after dinner 3 nights a week.